So, hello and welcome to the Action Coach Business Spotlight. I'm Lorna McAtee, and along with my husband, John Bogus, we run Action Coach in Cambridge. And what we do is we help business owners across the Cambridge region. Now, today I am delighted because I have got with me Guillaume Kendall, who is the CEO and the founder of the Attention Exchange. So, Guillaume, welcome.
Lorna, thank you so much for having me. I'm
No,
really pleased.
it really is my pleasure. So, listen, G, let's just kick off. Tell me about the Attention Exchange.
Sure. Okay, so by way of quick background, my background's really in fintech. So I spent the last 15 years working with banks, small, medium, large, old and new, about trying to innovate digitally. And something that came about some years ago, about 5, 6 years ago, was something called open banking. And open banking was brought on by the regulators to make banks the data within the bank that belongs to you available outside the bank. And it's really important because the reason they did that was because they felt banks had too much control over your user experience as a banking customer. And I saw an opportunity there to use that data with a consumer's consent to free them from the shackles of Google and Facebook from an advertising perspective. So I just need to put that little preface in place because it's really important that we basically are building a marketing platform on top of a fintech platform. So on top of open banking, we're building the Attention Exchange. So what it's all about basically is that the internet runs on attention. Everything that funds the internet, mostly Google and Facebook, is your attention as a consumer. And of course, we don't receive any revenue or income or real benefit from being advertised to online. In fact, it's a frustration, right? I don't think anyone we've spoken to said, I love being interrupted in the middle of something I'm going through by an advert. And yet it's a $600 billion industry built on interruption, right? And built on top of data that's predominantly your browsing behavior. So every time you go on a website and accept cookies, which at some point will be replaced by Google in Chrome, it says basically, yeah, we will track you around the web. And if you search for a shed and you're interested in buying a shed, probably for the next 3 or 4 months, you're going to see shed adverts for everything, everywhere you go, even once you've bought the shed. So what we've built is something completely different in the sense that our audience share their transaction data with us from their bank using open banking, which means that we can see their interests based on where they spend their money, not what they're searching on the web.
Interested.
And when they've bought the thing, they don't get any more adverts for it because they bought the thing. I still see Volvo adverts on every website and YouTube video and social platform I'm on because I search Volvo. The Volvo is outside my house right now, right? I've got it. You don't need to interrupt me and annoy me anymore. So that's fundamentally what we built. So we're trying to put the consumer in control of their value to advertisers, and we put 20% of what we earn from the advertisers into the customer's bank account directly. So we're trying to basically take all that money, that 600 billion, and funnel it back into the owner of the most precious commodity online, attention.
Okay, that's really interesting. So listen, tell me how long has the Attention Exchange been there, and where are you based, and how many staff have you got, and sort of who are your clients?
Okay, lots of good questions.
Yeah, lots of questions there. Sorry. So how long have you been going?
So 3 and a bit years now since we founded the company. About 2.5 years since I sold my house and quit my job and went full time. And then in terms of where we also Cambridge based now, so moved to Cambridge 2 years ago now, and work out of the WeWork. Obviously, I'm not there now, but the WeWork on Station Road. If you're familiar with it. Staff, we're a team of about 12 people, but we're geographically dispersed. So actually we work a lot with some Ukrainian developers who help build our platform. actually we've just started working or trying to work with the University of Cambridge in terms of they have a jobs portal where you can post jobs, and so we're looking for some smart data scientists and other data focused roles that we'll be hiring in the very near future.
Okay. And the type of clients then, who are the people that you work with?
So our clients are typically challenger brands who want consumer attention. So typically, if you have a brand that sells things to consumers, you have very limited choices in terms of getting hold of consumer attention online. It's basically, as I mentioned earlier, Google and Facebook.
Yeah.
You're obviously not alone as a brand trying to advertise on Google and Facebook. And so what you find is that this is a particularly saturated marketplace where obviously people aren't on certainly on social media to buy things typically, right? They might follow things and other things, but adverts there's an automatic emotive response. As soon as he's sponsored, it's like, get out the way. It's an advert, not interested. Same on YouTube. We're just waiting for the skip button to turn on before we can go back to what we're doing. So we've taken, as I said, a different model where our users opt in. They download an app. It's called Zedosh, the app today, but we're about to relaunch it as the attention wallet. And they're notified when a brand that's relevant to their spending wants to speak to them, right? And so let's say, for example, you sell coffee pods, and you want to target coffee drinkers, we can put your video message or advert or piece of content in front of people that spend the most out of our audience in Starbucks, in Pret, at Costa, at Nero, who buy from Nespresso directly, so we see all their spending. So we know that the people that like to spend the most money on coffee are these 5,000 people, and therefore let's get their attention. And so they're notified. And then what we've seen is with adverts up to 2 minutes in length, which is absolutely an eternity anywhere else online, we have a very interesting dynamic happening where people, the longer the advert, the more likely they are to engage and click through to the brand. So we have an average click-through rate of 34%, right? Which compared to Facebook it's under 1%, right?
Yeah.
And so what that means is we can target much more accurately, much more economically. So we cost a lot less than those platforms because we require far fewer individuals to target. We did something with a carbon negative sneaker brand recently called Elliott Footwear. And with 5,000 of our users who we knew bought shoes more than 3 months ago, who we knew had bought brands like Veja, which is a vegan footwear brand, who made charitable donations to charities that we thought were suitable. So we really hyper-targeted 5,000 people, and they had a 56% click-through rate, from just 5,000 people, which meant it took them £500 on our platform, and it took them to get the same number of clicks on Facebook, £13,000, because Facebook required 1.12 million impressions to get the same 2,600 clicks.
Gosh.
Right? So the scale, the challenge we've had as coming not from advertising, coming from fintech, is understanding that most marketers like to buy views, impressions, at massive scale without really understanding. It's not that they understand. They're used to buying massive scale because they're used to such poor returns. And I don't know any other industry that satisfies itself with 1% success. It's madness. So there's huge wastage. And of course, going back to this carbon negative piece for Elliott Footwear, we then calculated the carbon cost of our campaign versus on Facebook, and we're 11,000% less carbon or something. Because you got to bear in mind, people don't really correlate it, but when you're constantly scrolling through social media, you're using energy, right? And you're using bandwidth, and you're using on Facebook, because the video is scrolling through your physical time, your feed. They preload 50% of the video, even if you don't start watching it, because it's there in case. Whereas our users, we only stream the video and they watch it to completion. So we don't push out data or use energy that doesn't require that isn't going to be used. So anyway, I've put a lot out there, but it really is a very different model where consumers are opting in. It's very clear consent. We see 3 years of their transactional behavior directly from their bank account, which basically means that we can be much more refined in our targeting. It's fairly rewarded and they pay attention. Last point I'll just make, 2 points is, one, just finish on the carbon piece. If digital advertising was a country, it'd be the 6th largest pollutant on the planet. It is gigantically wasteful in terms of energy.
Wow.
And the second thing is that, again, I hadn't realized, is if it was of the 600 odd billion that's spent on digital advertising, around, estimates vary between 60 billion and 100 billion is lost to ad fraud. And what's ad fraud? It's bots, it's people setting up websites where they'll let ads play on their websites and use automated clickers and things to raise the value of that website as a target for adverts that are all programmatically displayed. Anyway, but advertisers just accept that. And you think, if that was as a criminal enterprise, it's the 2nd largest criminal enterprise on earth after drugs. So you've got the 6th largest pollutant and the 2nd largest criminal industry being digital advertising. And our platform solves both of those things, because every single one of our users must be human. They must have a bank account. They must spend in the right way. And if they don't get any ads. So you can't gamify our platform at all. So every single impression as an advertiser is going in front of a user, either that spends with your competitor today or spends in your market in general.
Gosh, it's truly fascinating. I'm learning stuff here that I've never come across before. It's certainly very, very interesting. I have to ask, when you were growing up, is this where you thought where you would end up?
Did I think I would get into digital advertising? No, absolutely not. Did I think I'd end up in something quite leading edge in a technology perspective and disrupting? Yes. And I always want to sort of do my own thing. So those elements, yes. But the fact that I've ended up in digital advertising definitely probably wasn't something I was thinking about as a kid.
Okay. What's would you say the biggest issues that you've overcome?
Quite a few. Firstly, Apple blocked us for quite a while getting onto the App Store. So we took them on and got through it, which was the first sort of major hurdle for our early stage business. The second is, we're an early stage business, and the UK has a tremendous ecosystem for early stage business to raise angel investment. I don't know if you're familiar, but there's EIS and SEIS funding and tax relief for angel investors, which has been really good for us. We've raised in total just under $750,000 so far. But what we're finding really difficult is making that step from angel investors to our first institutional investors.
Okay.
And it's not uncommon. It's sort of what's known as Death Valley in the startup world. So thankfully we're still here, but that's the sort of the constant worry on my mind is, where's this next tranche of funding going to come from? We're scaling all these things, we've got all these ambitions and plans. The rest of the world seems to be moving in our direction, but we're really haven't yet found our perfect match in terms of our first institutional investor.
Oh, okay,
that's the challenge.
Yeah, that's interesting. And thinking about sort of your learnings in business and life, what would you say have been your biggest ones?
I think what I've learned doing my first startup is the challenge from getting from an idea concept to something tangible and real was that there really was an awful lot of noise to sift through in terms of how to get this thing moving. And speaking to other early stage founders, different people have found all sorts of different ways to start. But what I've found surprising, and what I've learned is, if you sort of watch Dragon's Den, right, and you have these people turn up and say, here's my pitch, and then they're lucky enough to get some funding, the terms that they agree on Dragon's Den are often terrible from a business perspective. You give away huge swathes of equity
Yep.
for £50,000 and a dragon. And of course, I get it. There's value in the exposure online on BBC and exposure of being able to work with the dragon. But the point is that I think people sort of forget that, or don't realize, because we're just there aren't many people out there pushing the best practice startup from 0 to 1. In fact, I was invited to a Cambridge meetup where I did a presentation to other sort of people who had various ideas and were looking to get off the ground. And that was sort of the first thing was, don't give away all of your pie too quickly, because hold on to it as long as possible, because there's no shortage of people trying to screw you, basically. Or not even necessarily screw you, but they'll take as much as they can because they can. And if you do things properly, so I'm very lucky. I've married a corporate lawyer. And so she was very clear on what was and what's not good practice. But of course, it's only because I've married her that I'm able to get some of her advice without going bankrupt. So yeah. Anyway, so what I've learned is there's definitely no shortage of people out there who are willing to help, are good people, but there's also probably an equal amount of people who will take you for a bit of a ride, and you need to be really careful on the decisions you make early on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just have to ask, because it's truly inspirational, kind of what you do. Where do you take inspiration from?
That's a good question. Do you know, I got bought a book when I was in my teens. I might be showing my age. But it's called How They Started, right? And this was probably sort of on the cusp of the internet era. So it was actually talking to dragons. Duncan Bannatyne was in there about how he started with ice cream trucks. And I've always just been very interested in successful startup stories and how they started.
Yeah.
Innocent Smoothie were in there. There's a bunch of people who went to a summer fair and basically put out their smoothies and said, if you think we should quit our jobs, put your empty smoothie container in this box. If you don't think we should quit our jobs, put it in this box. And by the end of the summer fair, their box of quit your jobs was overflowing. So all these sort of things really would inspire me to think, very optimistically about the chances of success if you go for it. Richard Branson being another, I read, his version autobiography, the first version. And just crazy stories of last ditch minute negotiations with banks and lenders. And I think one of his on Virgin Atlantic, the first test sort of flight, the engine blew up, all sorts of like things. And so all of that inspires me to think, screw it, let's do it, which is Richard Branson's methodology, outlook on life. And secondly, it's sort of really not over till it's over. And I think that's been something that has definitely seen me through this far. Not that we've really got far in respect to those particular individuals, but we've come pretty close to the edge many times and just keep on going. Yes, lots of brilliant, successful people, and I think they're truly inspiring. And I just think the UK. I lived in London before I lived in Cambridge, and certainly I felt that there was really no limit to the opportunity you had to get things done. And then since moving to Cambridge, there's sort of even more so. Everyone here is so bright, so driven. We've made lots of friends since moving here. And there's one chap here who's a stem cell researcher. I think this guy is just brilliant. But it's people everywhere are very, very bright. And I try to surround myself by people smarter than me. And typically it's very easy to do here.
I agree with you. Yeah. I mean, they do say that you're the average of the 5 people that you hang out with. So, hang out with brilliant people. And it's true what you say, G. The people that tend to be successful are the ones that are prepared to take risks. And even when you think you've come to the end of something, There's always another way. You've just got to find it. So what does the future look like then for the attention exchange, and other than what you've said already about funding challenges, do you see any other challenges?
Um, I'm sure there's plenty of unknowns. I think maybe to look at the question in a different way, I think there's an increasing amount of opportunity opening up as the rest of the world in terms of regulation and privacy concerns and everything else continues to be adopted and pushed through. There's the online safety bill that's coming through. All these sort of things are really conducive to a healthy condition for our platform, because we're basically a purely consumer consent driven play. So I see more opportunity than I do challenges ahead in terms of regulatory environment and everything else. And likewise, there's just been a whole bunch of changes to SCIS that we spoke about earlier and other things. So I think the ecosystem is improving. Internationally, for growth for us, the UK is by far the most mature in terms of open banking. And so that's a challenge for us as we look abroad. But the US is actually getting ahead of regulation for the private sector is. So that's quite exciting. But the rest of Europe, sort of France, Germany, and others are not quite as mature as the UK. So that's definitely a challenge. And in terms of what we're doing next, we're sort of preparing ourselves. We're about to release a new version, as I mentioned, called the Attention Wallet. And that will really enable us to scale in ways that we haven't been able to with our own app. Basically, the experience happens in people's existing applications they use. So imagine signing into YouTube in the future, not getting bombarded with adverts every 3 minutes whilst you're watching something, but choosing to have and watch some content in your own time and then not having to be interrupted. So you'll be able to sign in to any platform that adopts to us, integrates with us with your Attention Wallet. So it's quite exciting. But yeah, we're constantly on the edge of sort of world domination and certain death. So one or the other will happen.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm thinking back to your 18-year-old self then, G. What advice would you give yourself?
Do it sooner. I think so. I've had lots of ideas. This is probably the only one that's got better as time's gone on. Normally by the morning, I think, oh yeah, that's why no one else is doing it. This one, I've just never been able to answer in my mind why we're the only ones looking at open banking and applying it in this way. So there's obviously the timing element of that being right. But I wish I'd just done more. I would have probably learned things from acting on some of my earlier ideas that might have failed. But equally, I would have learned a lot in the process. So I'm not definitely not 20 years ago what I've been speaking to my 18-year-old self. And I'm about to have my first child with my wife. So there's a lot that I think I would have liked to have risked earlier in order to learn more earlier. And I don't think I'd be in any worse a position than I am today. So that would be definitely the thing I would say.
Yeah, do you know, it's always interesting. I always love asking people this question, and do you know what? That's a very similar response. I wish I'd done it sooner.
Yeah.
I even had a PhD doctor saying I wish I didn't do a PhD. So I particularly love this question. But listen, just before we wrap up, G, is there anything else that you want people that could be watching this video to know?
Just that there is an alternative to paying Google and Facebook your hard-earned money to interrupt and annoy people. And it really is that is the current status quo of the advertising world. And so if you are a B2C play and you need find access to some customers, think about where they might spend their money, and then give us a shout and we'll see if any of them our audience spend money in that way. And then we can connect the two. So that's really it. Yeah, there's an alternative out there. There's hope.
Okay, fantastic. So listen, on that note, if people do want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do it?
The best way, so probably through LinkedIn or just my email address is Guillaume at attentionexchange.co.uk.
Okay,
But
well,
Guillaume is a bit difficult to spell, so hopefully you'll find it written somewhere in the newsletter.
it's a bit difficult to say, and that's why I've been calling you G. But no, listen, fantastic. What I'll do is when I do the write up that goes out with this, with this interview, I will put all your details in there as well. So
Brilliant.
listen, thank you so much for your time. It's been
No, it's
really,
been
really fascinating. I really love, sort of true innovation, and really, sort of really progressive thinking. So, but very interesting to see what happens in the future. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, brilliant. Really enjoyed it. Thank you, Lorna.